Hi, everyone, and welcome to another episode of the Ayurveda podcast. Today's guest is Robyn Klein. She is the founder and lead consultant at Affinity Behavioral Allies, a dedicated team to transforming the conversation around behavioral intervention. In a world often quick to judge behavior, this conversation offers a refreshing shift towards understanding. Whether you're a parent, a teacher, or an advocate, you'll walk away with practical, research-informed strategies for behavior support and real lifetime examples of how empathy and expertise can change a child's trajectory. Welcome, Robyn. Thanks for joining us today.
Thanks for having me.
Absolutely. What drew you into special education and behavioral work with children?
I was a tough student. I challenged my teachers, definitely, and I didn't know I was dyslexic and had ADHD when I was younger. So I challenged the system a lot, and I luckily found an earth angel who saved me. Literally, I wasn't on a trajectory that was good in most ways. Luckily, I had a teacher who intervened and started an after school program when I was in high school for helping adults with disabilities that were in a residential facility, and also working with underprivileged kids. And it changed my life. I wasn't interested in very much. I didn't know my place in the world. I didn't know I was capable of much more than what I was accessing. And she exposed this whole other world to me that I didn't know existed. And I just felt like I had a purpose. I finally had a purpose, and I felt successful in that space. And after I knew that that was a possibility for me, I was able to focus and go to college and learn about my disability and use that to my advantage.
So who was this earth angel in your life?
It was a high school teacher. Her name is Sandy Millman. She was one of those teachers where all of us kids who got in trouble were sent to regularly, and she made a family out of us. Yeah, it was brilliant.
What do you think that she did differently that inspired you on your path?
She noticed a strength within me, and it's what I strive for in my work. And I think that's what makes me good at what I do, is that I'm able to find strengths with really tough kids, that people look at the behavior and stop there, and they don't look for the heart and um the strengths, and defining a purpose or helping that kid discover a purpose and where they fit in the world. I think that's what she provided me, and it's something that I work to provide in my role.
So when was the moment that you decided that you were going to go on this path? If you were experiencing these things as a young adult, what was the moment in your professional career that you said, hey, I want to help these students that were me at one point?
Yeah, I mean, I think it was during high school. I mean, again, I wasn't on a path to graduate by any means. That exposure really heightened my awareness and gave me a purpose to focus on. In college, I did a lot of work with other folks with dyslexia that was inspiring and powerful for me. And then I started doing an internship at a prison for mentally ill inmates. And I think through that work and working with that population up front, before my career really started, I think has really carried a lot of my views and a lot of my own behaviors forward. That experience of working with a population that is so judged. People are so fearful and hateful towards a population, especially the population I worked with. Again, they were mentally ill. So they were there to get help with their mental illness and also get an education. What a beautiful thing. Because again, once we put people in jail, we tend to not work on rehabilitation skills and getting them the help that they need. And so I was grateful to be a part of that work. And I learned so much about the judgment and how to navigate and help them when they feel like so far removed from the world, and the world constantly sends that message that they are these awful people and they've done these awful things. And I was able to sit there and recognize that they're human, and we're all one decision away from winding up in the same place. I had to question really young, does that make you a bad person? Does that rule everything about you? Or is there more to you that can be molded, shaped? Is there a purpose other than negativity in the world for someone in that space?
Your answer made me think of the times that we get told certain things in school and we believe them. And then we live life through those seeds that somebody else planted in us. Like, oh, you're bad at math, or you're a troublemaker, or all these things that someone else planted in us. And then we live through those things because, oh, well, my teacher said I was bad at math. But as we grow as adults, I think that we get to decide which things we take on and which things we let go. And like you said, we are all one decision away from ending up there. What do you think the connection is between the prison system and the school system? What do you see in how we judge like behavior in children and in adults?
I don't think we're doing well in that area. There's the school to prison pipeline where detention centers and prisons were determined based on reading scores and test scores. And so if a certain area had lower test scores, that's where they would build prisons, detention centers, things like that.
Prisons are being built based on school grades.
The test scores, yeah. Um,
So
they
the
they
test
were in
on the test scores, really?
especially reading scores, because if you're illiterate, there's a higher likelihood that you will wind up in prison. And so that's how they decided that. There's a great movie, like Superman. It came out, gosh, I mean, I'm aging myself here, but it was about 15 years ago or longer. And they had a really great explanation about how they did that, how they laid out, um, again, institutions based on the test scores, reading scores, things like that. And children are so misunderstood because we look at the problem. When there's a problematic behavior, a kid's causing behavior issues or challenges, especially in the school setting, it's highlighted, right? And we look at it as a problem. And then the kid often feels like they're a problem. Like we don't separate the behavior from the person in our society and in our norms of society. But we're looking at behavior and misunderstanding the students because we're looking at behavior as a problem. And then we're looking at the child who is misbehaving as being a problem. And that's the messaging we send. Behavior is communication. That's the age old, truth about behavior is that it's all communication. And so when we look at it as a problem and not the cause of it or what the need or what is being communicated through that behavior, we're missing the mark. And so, punitive disciplinary strategies like suspension, for instance, it works for the kids it works for. But unfortunately, we use it as a broad strategy and it's not always effective. It's what you do after the suspension or how you reconnect that kid to that environment. But what we do and what I experienced, and even as an adult, I've carried this all my life and I know better. I've done a lot of therapy in my life. Working in this field too, I still feel like, oh my gosh, I'm doing something wrong, or they don't like me, or I messed up because I struggled for so many years in my formative years with trying to get the help I needed and connect to the resources I needed and to accept the help I needed as a teenager, which is really hard. There was help available to me. I was in a very great school district with, I had a lot of great teachers. I had some not so great teachers as well, but people tried. I was a tough teenager who, was too cool to get the help I needed. And, but the messaging that you take out of those early years, it carries you through life. Um, and it's the same with, putting people in jail and just the exclusionary strategies that we use in general, kicking a kid out of the classroom, sending them to the office, all of those things that just send the message like, you're not welcome here. And you're a problem, not your behavior is a problem, or you're letting us know that something's not working for you. How can we help you? And that's where we go wrong and misunderstand kids and their behaviors.
If you were speaking to your younger self, now knowing everything that you know, how would you approach younger Robyn, who
Gosh.
maybe wasn't open? Yeah.
Yeah. I have a lot of those kids in my position now. I would get creative, honestly. The one thing I see all the time is just people are so set in these old strategies that aren't, we all know. I mean, I've been in education now for 26 years, formally, and we know what we're doing doesn't work. And in 26 years, I've been hearing the same story. Every educator will tell you that our system is broken, like healthcare. I feel like we've been hearing the same thing. It's just, we're not doing anything to fix it. So I guess if I were working with a kid like me now, which again, I do, I get creative and I double down on their strengths. Like my teacher who created a whole after school program, not just for me. So I don't want to sound like it was just for me, but it was for all of us troublemakers to learn about empathy and find our purpose and find our strengths and expose us to the world around us that, that has tougher struggles than we do. That really changed everything. And I think I would do that same thing, but do it earlier. The one thing that I really emphasize in my work for Affinity Behavioral Allies and when I work in schools is to really double down on kids' strengths. If you are not tying your interventions to that kid's heart and strength, then we're missing the mark. We're not going to get that grandiose behavior change as effectively, as efficiently, as quickly as we could if we just helped them find a purpose, a connection, and really double down on what they're good at.
You mentioned before that sometimes students are just bored.
Mm.
And so, if a student is bored, how would you say it's an expression of this inability of not tapping into their strengths when a student is bored and expressing that boredom behavior?
Um, yeah. So honestly, kids are bored and it's causing a lot of behavior issues right now. Not that that's anything new, but when we were going through school, it was, why do I need this history? Why do I need this math? I mean, I think that's normal for any kid to be like, am I ever going to use this in life? The reality now is that with technology advancing so quickly, a lot of the jobs that we know are going to be obsolete. And so we're preparing these kids for a world that we knew, which is very different than the world they experience. I don't think a kid's sitting in class thinking, God, I could just drop out and make an awesome video and make more money than you'll ever see, teacher. And then they start acting up. I don't think that's that they're consciously doing that, but they could, right? Like when I used to teach in a classroom many years ago, my kids who wanted to be like football players or rappers, I could like tell them, like Lil Wayne's educated and his lyricism is like on point, whether you like or hate his messaging, his lyrics are awesome, right? You have to learn how to be a poet to do that, so I could reconnect them.
Mm.
If they want to be a
Mhm.
football player, like, okay, you need to be scouted. So you need to like graduate like you need to make it to like a college that you get noticed, so I could get them back. Nowadays, you really can't. They can drop out. They don't I'm not please everybody here. I'm not saying they shouldn't learn how to read, but like it's not as necessary in the world today. There's AI that could read it for them. You can function better, I guess is my point these days. And yet we're still emphasizing these test scores and these reading scores and these math scores and preparing them for this world that might not even exist when they're done. And most importantly, what I think is contributing to them being bored in schools is that we live in an instant gratification era. Well, the kids these days always makes me feel old when I say that, but kids these days, they are brilliant. They are so smart. They know more about technology than some of us do by the time they're in kindergarten or first grade. I mean, that also contributes to them being bored and then this need for this instant gratification, which is their reality about most everything. Um, and so their behaviors as a result of their boredom, they're impulsive, they refuse to do things. They escape any way they can. We call it elopement when they run off or go hide in the building or take off. Um, and yeah, I mean, that's just the reality is the kids are struggling because we're not changing our system to adapt to what they need and what engages them in their learning. And it's more critical now than ever. Like when we were growing up, home ec was great. It was important. But as you know, throughout these years, it's also the first thing to get cut. It's the first thing that we rule out, the arts, the music, PE, wood shop. We used to have to learn how to change tires and do like mechanic 101 back in the day. And that has definitely impacted everything and left these kids just when we made things more technological, we just took worksheets and put them on the computer, and then we deliver it to these kids, and that's it. Like, we're not making things as engaging as we could. Now, I do wanna say I'm generalizing, right? There's a lot of schools that are doubling down on those electives and specials and things like that. And there are people who are doing more hands-on and engaging lessons and curriculum. And there are more programs, tech programs, and vocational programs for kids to access, which is great. It's just not everywhere and it's not for everyone. And it's hard. There's different criteria in different districts to access that stuff that a lot of the kids who need it the most don't meet that criteria. So then we're missing a whole population of kids, that really would find good purpose in doing that stuff, but they don't have the reading score to get into it, or they don't have the attendance, or they don't have the behavior, or um so it's just kind of like a cycle.
What changes are you seeing, though, that are giving you hope for the future?
I mean, honestly, these kids are just again, they're brilliant and they need that instant gratification. They're not going to put up with the stuff we have all these years. Like the first time they go to get like an unemployment check and they have to wait, weeks and fill out crazy documents and they're not going to put up with it. And they're just going to code up something and like change it. The first time, they take their parent for social security or something. I mean, they're not going to put up with half the stuff that we do. They don't have the patience for it and they have the know-how to fix it. And they will, because again, they're just not gonna tolerate it. Um, that really gives me hope from starting this business too, seeing the amount of resources available to kids, with disabilities especially, um, watching educators and mental health providers, show up each day, and they are getting their butts kicked, literally. There is a lot of physical rebellion going on, physical aggression happening in our classrooms across the country. And, these people show up every day just taking it and working to help educate our kids because we're dedicated to the kids. And that gives me hope every day. But mostly it's the students. There was I'm not going to lie, there was a little time in there where I was a little concerned about what was coming out of our schools and the type of student. But this generation that is in schools right now is so incredible, and they are not lazy. They're smart and they get their needs met any way they can, which can look rough to us old folks. But in the end, the it was very evident to me, like, what do we want in life? We want people to get their needs met. We want people to be motivated, to persevere. Those are all exceptional qualities that we want and hope for from our youth. And here they are doing it. Doesn't look good, if they're mad at someone. We used to rumble for a few weeks, maybe go talk smack about someone, spread some rumors, or be, like get you to hate her because I'm mad at her, and all the separation and the fighting that happened before something went down. And now it's like they get mad and it is on, and again, it's not pretty, but in their mind, that's their need and they're gonna have it met. They're go-getters and they're intelligent.
When you enter a room and you see a child struggling, how do you shift the energy to build trust and connection with them?
Good question. Well, it's a little different in my role now. I was a teacher first. And as a teacher, I think that's easier because you have the time and ability to build that relationship and really understand the kid, in every aspect. Um, in the role I serve now, where I kind of am in and out and working more with the educators, it's really hard, and it reminds me of Leilani, who your last guest, that podcast, and how she talked about the kids being their own hero and their hero journey and being a part of that chapter. I loved that part of that podcast that you recorded with her because, especially in education, and it's so true. These kids are heroes. I look at my kids. I work with the SED population, seriously emotional disturbed, population. Um, I should say kids with a serious emotional disabilities. Um, and they're tough, but the beauty is their hearts are just beautiful. Unfortunately, I think a big part of that is because they've gone through some things or experienced life a little harder than others at times. Um, and, when I walk into a room and a kid is in crisis, it's about holding the space. Um, and responding in a way that is not threatening or challenging, but is more, again, not to sound cheesy, but is just supportive, just being there to support them through it, validate, listen. We call after crisis, we call it tension reduction. And I ask educators all the time when I train w- to identify words that explain what it looks like or feels like to be in crisis. And everything that comes out when I do this, I make a Wordle, remember those Wordle puzzles, and everything's so negative, like screaming and crying and um, anger and rage and chaos and all these negative words. And when I look at crisis, following crisis, especially, to me, is one of the most intimate and beautiful moments that you have. Again, kind of like Leilani was saying about when someone's crying and that they're just releasing and you just get to be there in that space and how beautiful of an opportunity. And I see it the same way. And I'm so glad she said that because sometimes I'm like, man, am I like twisted? Is my thinking a little dark or something? Because not that I want kids to have crisis moments by any means, but following it is when you really get a time they're vulnerable. You're still sitting with them, even if they came after you physically, verbally. You're sitting with them. You're maybe holding them while they're crying or sitting with them while they're crying and listening, and then planning how you're going to rebuild. And I think we all know that when you hit rock bottom, the only way is up, right? Christian Moore does a great job. He wrote a book, The Resilience Breakthrough, I think it's called, or maybe it's Breakthrough Resilience. I always mix it up. Again, dyslexic. But his book is great because it identifies the 4 types of resilience and how some people do need to hit rock bottom to come back up. And then there's street resilience, who the kids are just, there's relational resilience, the kids who really um, rebuild with the relationships and connections that they make. And then there's the resource resilience, like the people who are resourceful. But either way, again, following a crisis, it's a tough time. It's a tough time for those kiddos. It's emotional, it's raw. And we get to paint the next part of that with them and for them. And I find that just so beautiful. And they are their own hero. And it's great to be able to be there to help them discover that, like Miss Millman did for me.
Can you share your perspective on the law of affinity and where like attracts like?
Yeah. I named the company Affinity Behavioral Allies because of my tendency to attract and really relate to that population. In Kabbalah, we learn about like attracts like in the law of affinity and how we draw in what I don't want to say we draw in our purpose, but we draw upon our purpose and experience life from that space. And for me, it is that population of kids that just struggle and don't fit the mold and just think differently and learn differently. It just makes sense to me. It's one of the only things in my life that I could look at and be like, that makes sense to me. I get this. I guess I get what's happening here. And it's a gift, I guess, that I didn't realize was a gift until a short while ago. I thought everybody kind of saw what I saw. And now I realize that that's not the case. It's funny because when I think about my personality, I feel very cold and I feel like I am not a warm, welcoming person. But for some reason, that population always gravitates to me. Like you asked about, how you build that relationship or how you kind of show up in that space, especially after crisis. And again, especially not even really knowing some of the kids that I'm walking in on that. But I don't know, there's something that they see in me, I guess, or something that they recognize that I see in them that just makes it jive and work. So, amen, because I love doing what I get to do.
Why is this so important to you?
It's so important to me because I think that I don't again, I have a skill set that can help kids experience things better than what they would experience without someone stepping in to provide that support and advocate for them. And it's frustrating to me that we need outside influence to get that change in our schools. And it's frustrating to me to watch what's happening in our education system every year. I mean, every year I've taught for, again, 26 years or been in this field. um, I am just constantly I feel like I constantly hit a brick wall that shouldn't be there. It's just common sense approaches. And, you know, if any educators are listening, I'm going to tell you service learning and parents, service learning projects. The fact that, for instance, schools aren't providing more for people outside of their walls and having those kids be invested and involved in that is mind blowing to me. Like little things like that, I have to fight for. And I just don't understand. Like we used to have a lot of volunteers and we used to connect with our communities more and we used to do more field trips and like get these kids out into the world to generalize their skills. And again, we don't do those things that make such a difference in schools again, overall. And it's something so simple that makes such a big difference. And there's so much of that. I look at so many things and I'm like, just this simple thing would make such a big difference. And I think it's just the anger, it like fuels the passion in me because, if nobody says anything and nobody does anything and nobody advocates for these kids, and there's people who do what I do and are amazing at it. I work with a team of amazing educators, and I see amazing educators every day, but it's just not landing right for these kids who struggle behaviorally. And I also then see, I've been in schools, but I can't help but recognize what it's doing for families and how families don't know what to ask for and families don't know how to advocate for their child early on. And schools, not intentionally, I don't think this is an intentional, screwing the kid and family thing, but I don't think it's intentional, but, schools really don't, they need to be pushed often to take the action that is needed for kids that have behavior issues. So, for example, kids who get suspended often, families have the right and could/should be, going into that school and being like, what is the school doing to keep my child from being suspended again? Or what are we doing to intervene to teach my kid better so that they don't keep getting suspended? Where's the data that shows that my kid is doing this many times, or this intervention is working or not working? So I think helping families really learn what they can do in that to challenge the system, I think is really important. What drives my passion is just that there's nobody else fighting for these kids that need it, and families don't know how to, and we just get kind of stuck in in this cycle.
So for parents and teachers or anyone listening that is in this caretaker role, what is one simple mindset shift that they can make today to better support these kids in today's world?
One is tough for me, but if I had to pick one, I would say to recognize that behaviors communication and really look at what the behavior is trying to tell you. If I could take it one step further, there's strategies that I would definitely recommend to families and educators and anyone listening that works with kids is to make things visual. Kids don't hear like they used to, they see. Everything is text or, videos or TikToks or, they need to see things. So if you're really trying to get something in their head or get a commitment out of them or express a rule or a boundary, it really helps to make it visual. It also really helps to make it factual. So data becomes really important, or showing kids and involving them in the conversations about their actions and behavior. One of my favorite tools this year and last year that I just love, and it's all over my website too, and did a whole training on, is contingency maps. Thinking of, if I have this situation, I could take this path and this will be the outcome, or I could take this path and it will be the outcome. And we usually do green choices, red choices, positive, negative. But really understanding that is the reality of what you are getting into, and helping them see that, not just hear it, is really powerful. Um, there's about, like, 6 big things. We have to stop solving problems for kids. Like, we're very quick to control and jump in. We're either jumping in and solving problems, or we're too scared to address the kid and the behaviors. Again, especially our kids who are physically aggressive. When you address things, we then just are s people are scared to address it, and then that reinforces bad behavior. Root things in fact, make things visual, loo look at the behavior as a need that they're trying to have met, and don't be scared.
As an entrepreneur, what guided you towards wanting to start your own business rather than continuing as a teacher in the education system? Why a business?
Yeah, well, I'm still wrapping my head around the fact that I started a business. Never saw it coming. Again, I barely graduated high school. In my position in schools, you can only apply the Band-Aid for the educators in the schools. And then I can't support parents. Parents' only option to get help with kids with behavior issues is to get an advocate, to get a lawyer. If their child has autism, they could go to BCBA clinics. There's mental health supports, there's behavior therapy, there's actual actionable resources out there, but there's nobody addressing the intervention pieces of the rest of our population that is struggling in our schools. I feel like as a school employee, I'm making a difference, but any intervention is as good as it's implemented, right? And schools are just short staffed. We are so short in resources in schools to provide the support that these kids need. And again, our system is so far removed, I believe, from what these kids need, and we're gonna just keep fighting the same battle over and over, and I've been fighting it for 26 years, and I'm exhausted. And it's not because of the kids, and it's not because of the behaviors, and it's not because of the educators, it's the system. It's exhausting. And so I started this business to support schools that don't have behavior specialists, because these behaviors are blowing up everywhere, and not every district has the capacity to hire or have someone in these positions in their district, helping the educators reframe their thinking and look at the behavior differently and collect the data and get creative in their strategies and really see the kid. And so there's a whole bunch of schools that are left out of that gift. And most importantly, families are limited in their access to resources to challenge these schools to say, where is this data? What are you doing? How are you intervening? Except to hire really expensive folks. I, I know that a lot of our kids who have a lot of behavior issues tend to be from families that don't have the capacity and the resources financially to access that support that they need. And so that's why I started this business, is to fill that gap. My goal in the business is to use the profit to build a school for kids coming out of juvenile detention centers. I want to start a sports league for kids in our state that are in our alternative schools. Again, doubling down on those strengths. They like to move. Let's get them moving. And people aren't doing these things. And so I'm going to fill this gap until I have the resources available to try to influence and change the system as a whole.
I believe that you're a mission-driven entrepreneur. That's one of the reasons I
Thank you.
wanted to have you on the podcast.
Thank you, and thank you for saying that. It's incredible to hear, and it really is an honor to be here today, and also just meeting you and, in that community is just, yeah, I'm so blessed. Thank you. And thanks for recognizing it
Thank
for
you.
what it is, because it is. It is a big part of wellness. And, looking at these kids through a different lens is so beautiful and so important. And we don't talk about it enough. So I'm really blessed to be here to be able to, especially in this space of looking at it as wellness and, holistic and the whole child and spiritually too. And, again, we missed the mark on that. So thank you.
No, thank you for the work that you do. And in which ways do you believe that spirituality plays a role in what you do and how you go about doing the work?
Yeah. I think spirituality, it led me here. Period, right? It helped me find that purpose. I knew when I was little that I was gonna be something. You know what I mean? Like I knew I was causing trouble and all these things weren't like connecting. But I saw this vision that I was going to be more than just what I felt like I was, right? This outcast and this badass and this troublemaker. And, I saw that. I also know that I see something when I look at kids, I see the energy, and I don't know that everybody does. So I think that helps to identify what's kind of going on under the surface, and another layer to the individual that is overlooked by people who might not be as sensitive to energies and auras and those things. And I know that that's a gift and an ability that, again, I didn't recognize that was different than other people until recently. And I think that karma plays a big part in it too. I mean, I remember when I was first starting out, and if a kid would like, cuss me out or something, my mom, I'd go home and vent about it. And my mom would be like, yeah, that's karma. You used to do that to your teachers too. They say you meet everybody you meet for a reason. And I will tell you, these kids, these heroes, their hero journey has shaped every aspect of my being. I don't have children of my own, and I just am it's just so beautiful to think about the ways that these students I had as a teacher, um again, really tough kids, prisons, alternative schools, detention centers, public schools too, but how influential their growth and their pain and their struggles and their successes, and how it's helped me grow. And to me, spiritually, it's so evidently connected. We really are all connected, and when one does better, then we all do better. And when one's struggling, we're all struggling. And it's the same in a classroom, it's the same in a school, it's the same in a community, it's the same in the world. And I think that really drives a lot of the work and the way I look at behavior.
Thank you so much, Robyn.
Thank you.
Thank you for your time and everything that you do. Yeah, absolutely. We are all on our journey, and this podcast, my intention is to bring these stories to life, to inspire people, and to open conversation. So thank you, Robyn.